When we consider leadership, it's often those with narcissistic tendencies who rise to the top. Narcissistic individuals are naturally drawn to positions of power, as they crave control and adoration. Unlike others who might shy away from leadership, preferring to remain in the background or simply content with their current roles, narcissists actively seek out positions where they can dominate, be seen, and receive praise. The desire to lead is not about serving others for them, it's about inflating their own sense of self-importance. This desire to be in charge, however, doesn't come with an intrinsic understanding of what true leadership entails. For narcissists, leadership isn't about empathy, self-awareness, or the well-being of the people they lead. Instead, it revolves around one central question: how can I make myself bigger? The very nature of their leadership style is often self-serving. Decisions aren't made with the intent to benefit the group or organization, but rather to reinforce their own status and ego. In this way, leadership becomes less about guiding others and more about feeding their own need for validation. When narcissistic individuals take the helm, it often leads to challenges, sometimes even disasters. Their leadership becomes a reflection of their insecurities and need for constant external affirmation. As a result, their actions are driven by what will benefit them rather than what will benefit the team, company, or society at large. This self-centered approach can have devastating consequences, particularly when it undermines the trust, morale, and cooperation that are essential for effective leadership. Thus, while narcissists are drawn to leadership positions, they often lack the emotional intelligence and empathy required to lead in a healthy, sustainable way. Instead of building a thriving community or organization, their leadership becomes a vehicle for self-aggrandizement, leaving those they lead to suffer in the long run. The real danger lies not in their ambition, but in their inability to separate personal gain from the responsibility of leadership, a combination that can ultimately lead to a toxic, dysfunctional environment. Throughout history, narcissists have never been a rare breed. In fact, they've often been the ones who left their mark on the world, dominating the pages of history books. Ordinary individuals don't typically get remembered by history because they lack the extraordinary actions that shape it. Narcissists, however, tend to thrive in environments where power, control, and domination are key. Their need to be in charge, to lead, is almost innate. Whether in politics, business, or any other field, narcissistic personalities are consistently overrepresented in leadership positions. But this dynamic narcissism, combined with power, often proves disastrous, especially when such individuals gain access to critical decisions or even nuclear codes. It's terrifying to think about a country being led by narcissists, yet this has been a recurring pattern throughout history. The reason narcissists so often rise to power is their sheer magnetism and ability to draw people in. Charismatic to the core, they have a unique way of captivating their audiences. A narcissistic leader exudes a kind of confidence that is almost hypnotic. Despite being driven by deep-seated insecurity, they project an image of certainty and assurance akin to a carnival barker promising the greatest show on earth. People are often caught in the web of this magnetic allure, eager to believe that they are witnessing something truly exceptional. In contrast to the humble leader who may admit to uncertainty, the narcissist never doubts their own greatness. This overpowering self-assurance is one of the reasons they can capture the attention of so many. They have an uncanny ability to read the room, to understand the emotions and desires of others, which is why they excel in social settings. It's a skill that makes them incredibly effective salespeople, convincing people to buy into their ideas, often with little regard for the consequences. Narcissists combine their charm and social savvy with an unsettling lack of empathy. Their entitlement and need for dominance allow them to manipulate situations to their advantage. They know exactly how to craft a narrative that benefits them, drawing people into their orbit with promises of a better future or an illusion of belonging. The result is that entire groups, whether within a company, a country, or even a small town, can become easily manipulated. It's staggering how vulnerable people can be in the hands of a narcissistic leader. They have an extraordinary ability to make others feel like they are part of something monumental, even if it is a destructive force. History is full of examples where narcissists have led cults, political movements, and organizations, bending others to their will with nothing more than their powerful rhetoric and unshakable conviction. What's truly unsettling is how we, as a society, are often drawn to these figures. There's something about charisma and charm that is almost irresistible. It's as if we are hardwired to follow them, to be captivated by their vision. But the problem arises when we fail to recognize the danger behind the charm. Narcissists can be so convincing, so persuasive, that we don't see their darker motives until it's too late. It's like trying to teach someone to be wary of a magician's sleight of hand. You can't really explain it until they've experienced the trick for themselves. And even when we recognize it, it can still be hard to resist. It's a dangerous game of attraction, one where the stakes are far higher than we often realize. I've learned over time not to fall for charm. When I encounter someone with that magnetic, almost hypnotic charisma, my instinct is to distance myself. I'll politely excuse myself from the conversation, maybe even change seats, and think to myself, it was lovely meeting you, but I really need to go. There's something about it that feels off to me. I can't quite put my finger on why, but I tend to shy away from that kind of energy. It's not that I don't appreciate the warmth or allure these individuals might radiate, rather, I'm acutely aware of the direction these interactions often take. They feel like a game, one where I'm simply not interested in participating. Sure, there's a chance I've missed out on some genuinely delightful, charismatic people, but I'm willing to take that risk to avoid the inevitable outcome. It's a strange feeling, yet it feels more like self-preservation than anything else. This brings me to something else that often crosses my mind, and something we rarely discuss: the idea of narcissism in friendships. We talk a lot about narcissism in the context of romantic relationships, but the dynamic of being close friends with a narcissist is something that goes largely unaddressed. The impact of having a narcissistic friend can be profound, and it doesn't just end with a romantic partner. Friendships, after all, are powerful spaces in our lives. For many, especially those who aren't in serious romantic relationships, friendships become the core of their social existence. Younger people today, in particular, seem to view their friends as central to their emotional world, often more so than past generations who were more likely to rely only on intimate partnerships as their primary source of emotional support. In this way, friendships have become formative, especially during emerging adulthood. A friend can shape who you are in ways that even family or a romantic partner might not. This is where narcissism can have its insidious effect. Narcissistic friendships can be just as damaging as romantic ones, though they often operate in more subtle, less obvious ways. The tricky part is that we often form these friendships at an early age. Our personalities continue to develop until around age 25, so what might have seemed like harmless adolescent behavior, maybe a little selfishness, a bit of self-centeredness, can evolve into something much more toxic as we get older. What once was just youthful indiscretion might reveal itself as a more entrenched pattern of behavior. The real challenge comes in reconciling these changes. We might have known someone since high school, and there's a nostalgic connection to the roots of that friendship, a sentimental tie to the person they used to be. But as they grow more and more self-absorbed, the cracks in that bond start to show, and it becomes harder to ignore the toll their behavior takes on us. The truth is, when we choose our friends, we rarely think about how their personalities might change over time, or how their flaws might become more pronounced as we grow older. Sometimes, we hold on to these relationships out of familiarity or nostalgia, even as they begin to drain us emotionally. We don't always recognize how a friend's narcissism can subtly affect our self-esteem, our sense of balance, or our mental health. Friendships should be a source of support and mutual respect, but with a narcissistic friend, you may find yourself constantly giving while receiving little in return. The longer you stay in this kind of dynamic, the more you might feel like you're just a pawn in their emotional game. And yet, breaking away from such relationships can be incredibly difficult, especially when you're emotionally invested in the history you share with that person. Ultimately, it's important to recognize that our social environments shape us profoundly. Whether it's a romantic partner or a friend, the people we surround ourselves with play a significant role in our emotional and psychological development. And while it's impossible to predict how anyone will evolve, we must remain vigilant in protecting ourselves from toxic influences, especially when those influences come disguised as friendship. Narcissistic friendships can be surprisingly devastating, often leaving us with emotional scars that are just as deep as those caused by toxic romantic relationships. While we tend to recognize the harm of narcissism in intimate relationships, it's harder to identify and address the same behaviors in our friendships. The betrayal of trust, the erosion of self-confidence, and the lingering feeling of having been played by someone we considered a close friend can be extremely painful. People often feel foolish for not seeing the signs sooner, especially when it involves someone they've known for years. In fact, the damage caused by narcissistic friendships can be just as significant as the damage we experience in any narcissistic relationship, perhaps even more so because of the length of time and emotional investment involved. What makes it even more difficult is the emotional complexity of long-standing friendships. Take, for example, a friendship that has spanned decades. The bond is not just one of mutual affection, but also of history and shared experiences. This sense of loyalty can cloud our judgment and make it much harder to walk away from such a relationship, even when we see the toxic behaviors emerging. In many cases, we stay loyal because the friend has been there for us through key moments in our lives, watching us grow up and sharing milestones with us. The connection feels almost familial. It's as if there's a shared history that binds you together, making it seem unthinkable to cut ties, even when the relationship becomes one-sided and emotionally draining. Compare this to a newer intimate relationship where the emotional attachment might not be as deeply entrenched. A few months in, it may be easier to recognize that things aren't working and decide to walk away. But when it comes to a childhood friend who has been with us for a large part of our lives, the bond feels different. We often start doubting ourselves, questioning if we're the problem, wondering if we're simply too difficult to get along with. The more we blame ourselves, the harder it becomes to see our friend's behavior clearly. We start to question our own perceptions, even when we know deep down that something isn't right. It's also important to note that, like any relationship, friendships can change with time. There are seasons in life when certain friendships no longer serve us or align with who we are becoming. For example, a friend who becomes a parent might find it difficult to relate to someone who doesn't have children, and vice versa. Life stages can shift the dynamic of any relationship, and sometimes it's necessary to let go, even if it's painful. However, when the issue is a friend who is being consistently toxic, invalidating, manipulative, or antagonistic, the need to let go becomes even more urgent. We tend not to view our friends as potential betrayers in the way we might view a partner, but the emotional toll can be just as damaging. The subtle nature of narcissistic friendships can also make them harder to detect. Unlike a romantic partner, who you may see every day, a friend might not be present in your life as constantly, which allows toxic behaviors to go unnoticed for long periods. It can take years before you realize that your closest friend is, in fact, a narcissist, and by then the emotional impact might be far greater than you expect. The fluctuating nature of these relationships can make it difficult to pinpoint the exact moment when things started to go wrong, which only adds to the confusion and emotional turmoil. Ultimately, the question we must ask ourselves is not whether we are the problem, but whether a friendship that undermines our well-being is worth maintaining. The emotional complexity of long-standing friendships, mixed with the deep sense of history and loyalty, makes it difficult to see toxic patterns for what they truly are. But just like any other relationship, friendships should support and uplift us. When they begin to drain us, it's crucial to recognize it and take steps to protect our own emotional health. For many, it can take an entire lifetime to fully recognize and confront the complexities of relationships, especially when it comes to navigating the subtle yet powerful dynamics of narcissistic personalities. What makes this journey even more challenging is the fact that our exposure to different types of relationships varies greatly. For example, in the case of friendships, unless you're living in very close quarters with someone like with a roommate, you're not typically exposed to the same level of intensity and constant interaction that might occur in an intimate partnership. This lack of close proximity means that the everyday tensions we might experience with a partner often don't manifest in the same way with a friend. In romantic relationships, the friction often arises from areas of shared responsibility, tasks like household chores, child rearing, or simply managing life together. These become fertile ground for tension, revealing deeper issues of equity and fairness. With a friend, however, such issues are less likely to surface simply because the relationship isn't exposed to the same ongoing, demanding situations. In fact, a friendship may persist for a long time, even under the strain of a narcissistic influence, simply because it's not subjected to the same rigorous tests as a romantic or familial bond. This can make it especially difficult to recognize and confront the toxic dynamics in a friendship that may be long-lasting, yet subtly damaging. But perhaps the most challenging relationship to untangle is one involving a narcissistic parent. The complexity of this dynamic cannot be overstated, as it has the potential to shape not only a child's psychological development, but also their entire worldview. Narcissistic parents are not just unhealthy, they often inflict deep emotional wounds, and in extreme cases, their behavior can border on outright abuse. What makes this relationship even more painful is that, in some cases, the child is forced to step into the role of the parent. The narcissistic parent becomes emotionally dependent on their child, reversing the natural order of care and responsibility. In these situations, the child's needs are often ignored or belittled, as the narcissistic parent demands that the child cater to their emotional needs, suppressing their own feelings in the process. Expressing emotions or having personal needs is seen as selfish or greedy. The child, in turn, becomes disempowered, their sense of self continually undermined by the toxic behavior of the parent. This dynamic creates a deeply unhealthy environment for emotional growth, one where the child learns to deny their own humanity in order to meet the needs of the narcissistic figure. For children of narcissistic parents, one of the most important realizations they can come to is that none of this is their fault. They didn't choose their parent in a sense. It's like drawing the short straw in the karmic lottery. They simply happen to be born into a situation where the adult they should have been able to depend on is incapable of providing the emotional support or guidance that they need. Acknowledging this painful truth is the first step in breaking free from the toxic grip of the narcissistic parent. Ultimately, the best thing a child of a narcissistic parent can do is to seek out the one healthy, supportive adult in their life, a teacher, a mentor, or perhaps another family member who can offer the emotional care and guidance they so desperately need. This figure becomes the anchor that can help them navigate through the emotional turbulence created by the narcissistic parent. It's through these relationships that healing can begin, and the child can reclaim their sense of self-worth. While there's no easy way to remove oneself from such a complicated relationship, understanding the role of the narcissistic parent and seeking support from healthier influences